Okay, wonderful. So, of course, this is a just one-day workshop on machine learning meta models in design engineering. So, I'm extremely happy that I'm invited here to speak, and I'm very much thankful to Dr. Kanak that he has invited me to speak, basically. Okay, so the title of my talk is Components of Machine Learning Systems with hands-on. So, what makes basically a machine learning system? Machine learning system basically comprises data, then it has something to do with the model, then we compute loss, then we minimize the loss, then we see some other models, then we'll try to control the complexity of the model, and we do lots and lots of understanding and experimentation after complexity control, and then we'll look for the usage. So what data is all about? Data basically, you know very well, data can be numbers, it can be quantiles, information, observation, derivation, and measurement. So the first thing is that any machine learning model, if you come up with, and the size of data really matter. First of all, it is important that you should have a data. Somebody come to me and says, I want to apply machine learning. I have a problem and I want to apply machine learning. The first important thing you must have is the data. The next important thing is the size of data. Okay. First of all, you must remember that there is nothing to do without data. The big question is, do you have enough data? That's another question. Okay, so the size of the data depends on the complexity of the model that you are trying to fit. Okay, if you're fitting a simple model, more data might not help. If you're fitting a simple model like regression model and you have a bunch of data points and you want to fit regression model, okay, so more data might not help in that case. It's not necessary that you should always have a huge amount of data to work with. Okay, sometimes lesser data could also help. That depends on how complex your model is. Okay, and again, the complexity of the model you fit depends on the amount of data you have, unless you use complexity control. What do you mean by complexity control at all? We'll come to that point later on. Okay, and now we are living in a deep learning era. It's an era of neural network. We typically have a very large data sets and fit a very large model with complexity control. We do have a full complexity control. We are dealing in the deep learning era. Deep learning is all about neural network, and neural network, whenever you want to apply neural network to some data, your data should be large enough, should be big enough to work with. We have some complexity control over that. Okay, what are the practical considerations? Can you handle a large data set? This is the first thing. Do your CPU and GPU have enough memory? You might have to feed your model data in batches if data is too large. Okay, so sometimes when you want to learn something out of data, if you feed the whole of data, your computer will crash. It's your CPU or sometimes maybe GPU may not support the amount of data you have. So in that case, you have to feed in your data in batches. And the algorithms called stochastic gradient descent, batch gradient descent do require this kind of input to the computer in terms of the batches. Okay, so and another thing, can your model handle this? Okay, something like models based on, as I told you, stochastic gradient descent. Moment, not able to see. Hold on. Are good for this case. Okay, so another component in machine learning is you have training, testing, and validation data. Of course, so far as test data is concerned, you or your boss will hide that data from you. He or she will never show you that data set. It is completely isolated data set. Then you have to remember that whatever test set you have, this set is used to determine the performance or data which is never seen before. And so far as training set you have here, as you can see, training set you have. This is a training set. We build a model on this. This is a test set. This is absolutely hidden from you. And this is called validation set, where we validate our model. Okay, we validate our model, whether we are overfitting, whether we are underfitting, whatever it is. The validation set used to fit the data to check the overfitting, right? The validation set is also used to determine the hyperparameters. Now, what are the hyperparameters? Hyperparameters are not the parameters or are not the variables to obtain that are involved in the model. They are something different. They are something like a knob of a tap. We need to adjust them accordingly. Okay, like if you consider the gradient descent, if you know, then the learning rate is actually a hyperparameter in that case. Okay, so the validation set is used to determine the hyperparameters for training. So you can control a lot of complexity using the validation set. If you really, first of all, you have to build the model on the training set, validate the model on validation set, and then you have to check or test your model on completely unseen data. Okay, if it do perform well on the validation set, then we have a little bit of confidence to work on the test set. Okay, so what are the models? What are different models in machine learning? We have classification model, we have regression model, we have clustering, we have dimensionality reduction, we have deep learning, etc. Okay, so when you construct any ML model, you must remember there are several things to remember. Number one is there is something called bias variance trade-off or something related to underfitting, overfitting, and you must have your model to generalize well. Now, if you look at the first data set here, the data set is something like curvy. Okay, the data set behaves like slightly non-linear. It's not a linear, it's not in straight line. So if you try to fit a single line, okay, in this straight line, so what you're doing is you're trying to fit too much simple model to this data. That means you are basically having bias. Okay, you're putting a high bias. What do you say? That even though you're looking at the data and data seems to be non-linear, still you try to fit a straight line. That means you are having a high bias towards your model. You're assuming that you're unnecessarily assuming that your data fits in straight line. So you're having a high bias. Okay. Sorry, you're having a high bias. And if you go for the last model, look at this. It is taking each and every point. It is literally memorizing the data set. So this is something like 4th degree polynomial. Okay. So there are a bunch of 4 or 5 points, and you're fitting a 4th degree polynomial. So remember, if you have n points, and if you fit n degree polynomial, it's a perfect fit. Okay. For example, if you take something like 3, 4, 5, 6 point, and if you fit a 6 degree polynomial, the polynomial will be such that it will go through all the points. But such models are dangerous. It has a high variance. What do you mean by that? If you slightly change your sample, your model will be completely changed. That means actually it will not cover. It will not. I mean, of course, if you sample your data like this, and if you're fitting this curve, going through this bunch of points as your fit, because the degree of the polynomial is same as the number of points. Okay, you'll have that much coefficients there. So basically, if you change your sample, it will fit. The same model will not fit. It will have high variance. It will show high. If the same model you try to fit, it will show more errors. So we want the model should not underfit. You should not have high bias, as well as you should not have high variance. You should not. Your model should not overfit. Your model should not underfit. So you should look for just a right kind of model to it. You should look for a right kind of model. So what do you mean by generalize well? You should fit your model in such a way. You should fit your model in such a way that it should work on unseen data or test data well. It should not memorize the data like this, or it should not be something like this. Okay, it should not memorize the data like this, and should not something like this. Rather, it should learn the data. Okay, rather it should learn the data. Okay, so the next factor which I talk about, so we actually, you can see as in the initial slides, as I talked about the data model, we talked about the model, and we'll go for the loss. Okay, so what do you mean by loss? Loss exactly depends on the kind of model you're trying to fit. As I told you, in a machine learning, we have classification model, we have regression model, we have clustering, we have dimensionality reduction. We do have a deep learning models. So if you come to the regression model has different loss functions. A classification model has different loss functions. Dimensionality reduction, of course, kind of we introduce the loss functions in that, but every machine learning models that you build have first important thing is to start with the loss function. Okay, so the first loss function here, MSE, mean square error, actually is the loss function for the regression. Okay, this is the loss function for logistic regression. And this is for regression, and this is for logistic regression. Of course, this is not even though it is called logistic regression, but this is a loss function in terms of probability for classification model. And this final is the loss function for support vector machine. In machine learning, all you need to compute first the loss function, and your duty is to minimize that loss some way or the other. Okay, loss means error. The error that the error of your prediction and the error that you are observing. Okay, so let's get into the regression model first. So here I'm going to show you exactly how what is the working of a regression model does, how it fits the line by minimizing the error, and that error could be minimized using derivatives or called gradient search or gradient descent method. Okay, so we'll come to know that in a moment. Okay, so imagine that I have a data set. So I'm trying to fit a straight line. Most of the time, you know, when you experiment, when you do something, you always get a data set like this where you have X observation. This is called independent variable. And Y observation, this is called dependent variable. Okay. Now in this case, suppose I try to plot this data, I'll get some kind of this kind of relationship. So of course, so this particular X observations are the number of hours of studies, and these are test scores. Uh, these are the number of, this is called independent, this is called dependent. These are test scores, and these are number of hours of studies. It's just a toy example. Okay. Now, if you plot this data in a two-dimensional graph, the scatter plot it is called, it will look like this, and certainly see that there is some kind of relationship that as X is increasing on this axis, Y is increasing on other axis. The Y observation is on increasing. So I can somehow get hold of the shape of this data, and the shape of this data could be captured within using a straight line. So if I plot a straight line something like this, I can easily guess what's going on here. Okay. So what do you mean by that? If you fit a straight line, if somebody asks you, if you have any observation here, if you study this much, what is going to be your test score? So even though for that particular hour, the test score is not available on y-axis, still you can guess because now you have a line. You plotted a line means what? You obtain two important numbers. One is a slope and other is y-intercept. So to find the regression line or fit the regression model, all you need to find out two numbers, M and B, in case of simple linear regression. If you are regressing over more variables, so say let's imagine that you have two variables, x1, x2, and you have single output or predictor. These are called regressors, x1, x2. Then what model you're going to build? You're going to build the model like something like this: a plus bx1 plus cx2. So most of the things you might be knowing. I don't know how your first three sessions, basically your the professors takes on, but if they have taken it, it's good, well and good that you'll understand more about that. Okay. So the idea is to given a set of data points, something like this, all you need to fit the straight line to that. Okay, and fitting a straight line which looks like slope times this plus b. The m indicates the orientation and the b is the y-intercept here. B is the y-intercept here. Okay, and m is the direction of the line where you're going to fit. So of course you're giving bunch of points. You're giving x1. Somebody gives you x1, x2, xn, and somebody gives you y1, y2, yn. These points are given to you. These are called training points, out of which you're going to build the model. So here, first of all, so what's going to happen? So we want to have best fit. See, you can fit infinitely many number of lines. Okay, you can fit a line like this. You can fit a line like this. You can fit a line like this. Okay, you can fit a line like this whatsoever. There can be infinitely many lines, but you are looking for a line where you should have a best fit. Okay, at least it should not pass through all the point, but it should pass through most of the point, and it should have less error. Now, what do you mean by less error? So best fit is very much related to error term. So what exactly the error, you know very well. So let's imagine that you have these points and you are fitting some kind of line here. So of course, if you assume that this is the best fit, if you assume that this is a line passing through them, then you see that there is some error happening. There is some error happening. Okay, so this error EI, let's call it EI. for a particular point xi, you have some error. So let's draw it a little bit bigger, just for understanding purposes. Okay. Now you see this is our observed point yi xi yi, and this is our point predicted by the line. Let's call it yi hat. So what's going to happen? That error is basically yi minus yi hat. Okay. So this we call the error, but we don't satisfy ourselves with the error. What we do is we take a square of error. Okay. There is some reason. Of course, there is some reason, because at the end of the day, I want to find total error. Total error is summation of all the errors, EI, which is basically summation of yi minus yi hat square. So there is some reason behind it why I'm squaring it. Okay. Now, as you can see that what is this exactly yi hat? Yi hat basically is the predicted observation, predicted value by our model. Our model is y equal to mx. So if you really put this model here, if you square it, okay, now you can see that you have this error. Now this basically the error function, as you can see, this error is a function of two variables, m and b. So x and y are given, so m and b to be find out. Okay, so error function is the function of two variables. So if I have a m axis here, if I have a b axis here, I can always plot this number for different points on this particular 3D plane. So if you plot the error, you will something get some. If you plot the square error, you will something get a convex set basically. So convex sets are important because whenever you want to find the minimum of the convex set, so you don't get stuck anywhere else. So that's why we are actually squaring our errors. And of course, if you don't square the things, then the total may lead to 0. Okay. So we want to minimize the error. So there are two things, as I told you. First of all, you're going to find the first thing is to find the error, calculate the error, and next job is to minimize it. We want to minimize this error. Okay, so that our fit is going to be the best fit. For minimizing, we use something called derivative. We differentiate with respect to m and we differentiate with respect to b. There are two variables. So error function looks like this. Okay, as you can see that whenever I plotted the error function, it looks like this. This is the error surface plot, as I told you, on 3 dimensions. It's not really like that for the problem we are studying, but it is something very close to it. It's again a kind of a convex set. So I'm shown in a both direction. Okay, so let's get straight away. So what exactly we want is the following. Just a moment. Discard. Sorry. So we want, first of all, is that we are given bunch of points. We are given x and y points. Okay, and we have calculated the error. We have calculated the error, and we want to minimize that error. And we are going to use differentiation to minimize that error, right? So that's what it says. So of course we need to use partial derivative. If we know that we're using partial derivative. Partial derivative is something very important. They talk about the direction where you're moving out. Okay, so here, of course, so I'm going to write a function where I just cut and paste the code here. So I'll explain you the code, and we are actually doing it from scratch. Okay, so first thing here, what I'm doing is, excuse me, I need to, because I'm not able to see. Just a moment. Okay. So here, initially, I will define if name equal to main. So and I'll write my run function here. So first of all, I need a data to run a regression model. So points. So let me tell you that before this gen form text data.csv and delimiter is this. So I'm bringing data from NumPy. So first of all, I will import that library on the top. It will be on the next slide. So it is important for me to import the NumPy library to generate this data set. Okay. Then I will define some hyperparameters. So let me, again, I'm having some problem in the, just a moment. is I don't basically take it. Okay, so give me a moment. Okay, so I need to. Okay, fine. So what I'm doing is I'm importing a NumPy library. So from NumPy, I'm import everything. Star means everything. Okay, I'll go back again. Okay, now I'll write the code for you. Writing is going to be difficult, so we will just I have cut pasted the stuff and just go with that. So point here. So point's going to be the name of our data. So we are bringing data .csv from NumPy. NumPy has got this file, and we are using delimiter to be this. We are initially using learning rate to be 0.001. So this is a hyperparameter. Now we are initializing the value of b and initializing the value of m. Okay, so to 0, 0, and we say we want to go up to 1000 iterations. I'll talk about what this iteration is. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this starting gradient descent at the 0th position, first position, and the error will be at the second position. And I will do it as I will format it as initial b, initial m, and the error. So error that I'm going to compute via this function. Compute error for a given line, given points with the help of initial b, initial m, and the points, data points. Okay. So, and I will print the running. Of course, this is slightly we require bracket. And then I will update the value of b and m using gradient descent runner. I will define a gradient descent runner on the top, and I will print this that what is my final output as in terms of b, m, and error with the number of iterations. So of course, this I'm going to take into consideration number of iterations, b, m, and the error. Okay. So error again will be a function of b, m, and points. Then I'll move up. So as I told you, what is my first function here? My first function, just a moment. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to I just while cut pasting I'm just done it a little bit. So I will look for this function compute error. So my next function I will write as compute error for given data points. So it will contain BMN points. Initially I will initialize error to 0. And then what I will move through each points of my data set and I will do y minus this. So this basically is y minus mx plus b the whole square. So I'm computing the errors here. And then I will calculate, see, look at this, plus equal to, that means it will accumulate the error. And I will finally return the average of the error, right? I will finally return the average of the error. Now, if you look at the next function, here, next function is basically gradient descent runner, which I wrote out here on the top. I could have written this function here and then this function on the next slide, but okay, so fine. So now I'm writing the gradient descent runner. Again, this gradient descent runner will be it will take all the points. It will take b, m, learning rate, and number of iterations. Of course, b is going to be starting b, m is going to be starting m, and then from the okay, sorry. For I equal to in range to number of iterations, I will do this. I will calculate the step gradient. Now, what is step gradient, by the way? Again, I have to write this function step gradient, which is going to the final function of our this thing. So here I have written down the step gradient function on the in the down. So initialize the gradient, compute the gradient, b gradient and m gradient. So look at this. I use these two equations, del by del m and del by del b. So to compute this, and then I will update my new b is equal to the b current minus the learning rate, which basically times alpha times the gradient of b. So del L by del b. So this is basically the new b, and you will have new m, which is basically m minus m current, not minus, m current minus alpha times del L by loss by del m. So I'm differentiating first with respect to b, then with respect to m to get my new m and new b. Okay. So once I do this, I've done it. Okay. So let me show you. Let me tell you that whenever you are actually computing the partial derivatives, it is computing the direction where it has to go. Okay, and this error being a square error, this error being a square error, okay, this error being a square error, I'm having some problem with my system. So this error, okay, so this error is basically a square error and it is forming a convex function. Therefore, you can start at anywhere in the convex function. You consider it as something like a bowl and you want to reach to the down to the bowl. Okay, so this is basically an idea where we compute the partial derivative. We compute the partial derivative in x direction. We compute the partial derivative in y direction also. Okay, so let me tell you that how this gradient search work. This is the working of the gradient search at different points. The line has started to emerge at whenever you have 0 as the gradient descent, as the gradient is going for different m and different b values, the line is coming closer and closer. The line is coming closer and closer. Line is coming closer and closer. So we can also plot the iteration number and what is the error at that iteration number. So as you can see here, finally I have shown that with the same code that how this learning rate. Now there's something very interesting about learning rate. How this ball from here is dropping down. So this is what the alpha, the learning rate. Remember, we update our new b as the old b minus some learning rate times the derivative of L with respect to b. Now this learning rate should not be much high. Otherwise, what will happen is this ball will come down very fast and there may be possibility that it will jump out of this and it will go a little longer and then come back longer and it will stuck somewhere else. So we don't want our learning rate eta or alpha, whatever it is, should be very high. So we want this ball should drop down. We want this ball should drop down. Hold on. We want this ball should drop down slowly. Okay. Okay. So finally, what is giving me is it is giving some problems going on. So just hold on. Finally, what is giving me? It is giving me the value of m and value of b. Of course, I put it for thousand iterations in the original code. I will just return to the original code and show you what happens in the original code. Here we go. So we'll go to the code. Yeah. So code here. So the code here. Okay, so here I have the demo.py, the same file, which I basically have written down and explain you how it works, as you can see. So I'm going to run this file. That just a moment. It's happening around. Yeah, thank you. So I will run demo.py here. So if I run this file, okay, I'm sorry. So I run the file and I got the value of B in 1000 iteration, okay, and the value of M, and I got this error as discussed. So this was like the slide, and each time I'm trying to get, so these are very less number of iterations that I have converted to GIF. Not the complete 1000 iterations, but somehow it is approaching this is approaching to 1.47, or this is approaching to somewhat more towards 0.08. So if you look at the this particular uh, output of the code that you have here, 0.08 and 1.47, but I'm doing 1000 iterations. Okay, fine. So let's go ahead and talk about the regression using scikit-learn. It's a very simple thing that if you want to use scikit-learn library, you just have to bring in your data and just put them. What you do is using sklearn, you can import the linear model and put your linear model dot linear. Bring the class here, linear underscore model dot linear regressor, and what you do is you fit the values and you can just see how it is fitted. But this is just a one-line code. It's not from a scratch, where you can use scikit-learn library to do linear regression very fast as compared to the one which we have done before. Okay, let's go for the next stuff. It's called classification. Classification problems are basically there are problems like, will customer churn? That means if you are using, for example, Airtel, or somebody is using Vodafone, and somebody says no, Airtel is doing good. So would Vodafone customer churn to Airtel, or go to the other service? So if somebody wants to say, is it a check or not a check? Is it, I mean, is it a man or a woman? Or will this customer buy or will not buy? Do you have a cancer or not? Is this a spam email or a ham email? Whose picture is this? What is this text about? So these are the all problems that comes under classification. Classification basically, again, it's a machine learning technique where we use so many models. So here you can see that it is given a data, it is creating some kind of boundary. There's a one true boundary, and we just approximate that true boundary by means of the data which is given to us. Of course, there's a lot of noise added to it, but we still try to manage up to a good amount of degree that we do. Okay, so 1D classification problem. Imagine that you have a set which consists of a height and gender. You're given bunch of heights and you're given a gender, male, female. Of course, assuming that we have two genders only here. So now if somebody gives you some height, okay, now what is the problem here? If somebody gives you height, can you predict his or her gender? Okay, that's the problem. That's the 1D classification problem. Given a height, can you predict whether it's a male or female? Okay, generally we see that the male tend to have more heights. So this is basically, as you can see, that one, as you can see that there's a 1 here and there's a 0 here. Okay, that means 0 for, I can code it as females. Okay, and then 1 I can code it as males, for example. Okay, so as you can see, let's assume that this basically, if I assume, okay, I'm not saying that we have a minus height. So this is basically a graph where we have, but there are certain overlaps here. Okay, there are certain overlaps here, definitely. Okay. Let's see. So we are assuming that we have heights and we have male or female, basically. So what kind of model you can fit to this? Can you fit a straight line like this? Okay, can you fit a straight line like this? Okay, if you try to fit a straight line, I don't think so it's going to be useful. Or if you fit a straight line, you can still make some sense out of it, because you see that if you take a point here, if you take a distance from here to here, if this distance is less, okay, and then if we consider that as compared to this distance, then we say it belongs to 1. And if we take a point here, if you calculate this distance, or somewhere here, calculate this distance and look at the distance here up here. So we say that If this distance is less, then we can just classify it as 0. But these are some ways to classify. You can also put a cutoff line. Anything more than 0.5 goes to male, less than 0.5 goes to female, something like that. There are so many rules we can write, but that's not perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce something called sigmoid function. It's a S-shape function, and the function look like this: 1 upon 1 plus e to the power minus x. So this is basically, let's call it f of x. This function has some nice properties. If you compute f of 0 at 0, it will take a value 0.5 somewhere approximately. So at 0, if you put to so e to the power minus 0, it's 1 by 1 plus 1, it's 1 by 2. And if you have f of infinity, if you try to calculate f of infinity, so 1 plus e to the power minus infinity is 0, so it's 1. So f of infinity, as you go along this direction, it will get stagnate at 1. It will stop at 1. It will be 1 forever. And if you want to calculate f of minus infinity, f of minus infinity is 1 upon 1 plus e to the power minus. So here minus of minus infinity, it becomes 1 upon 1 plus e to the power infinity. It becomes 1 upon infinity and approximately goes to 0. So if we put x equal to minus infinity, it goes to 0. So this is the S-shape function, and you can see our data also looks like this. Our data also looks like this. So some points here, some points here. And one of the beauty of this function that you can see that it is bounded between 0 and 1. Okay, so this function basically, and you can write the code of this function something like this in Python. You can always write this function. So this function will calculate compute the graph of this function in Python will compute this graph of this is also called sigmoid function basically. So now what we do that this sigmoid function, as it has bounds from 0 to 1, so we are calling this sigmoid function to be h of z or h of w dot x. Let's call it h of z or 1. So this function, sigmoid function, which is basically something like this, they're very useful to use, useful for computing or modeling probabilities because it lies between 0 to 1. Okay, instead of whether particular given a height, whether particular is a male or female. So we say that given a height, what is the probability of it being a male? What is the probability of it being a female? So instead of actually classifying it as male or female, we try to compute the probabilities, and those probabilities could be computed using sigmoid function. Okay, so here you can see probability. If you compute the what is the probability that y equal to will be male. Let's compute the probability of being y equal to 1. Somebody is male given somebody use your height, for example. Okay, so it is computed like this: h of w comma x. And what is that basically? It is written to be something like that. What is w? W is nothing but w is computed like so here w is a vector which consists of something like this: w naught comma w1, and if you and x is a vector is something like x1 comma x2. So what is w dot x here? W naught x1 plus w1 x1 w1 x. So you can okay. So I'm sorry, just a moment. You can just say okay, 1 and x. For example, let me give you analogy to this. Suppose somebody wrote the equation like y equal to mx plus b, then this is nothing but we can say some w dot x, this particular equation. Why? Because w can be written as something like m comma b, and x can be written as something like x comma 1. If you take a dot product of these two vectors, it will become mx plus b. So this w dot x again here is something like mx plus b kind of thing. Okay, so w dot x is again some kind of mx plus b. Okay, because we know that here we have done. So w is a vector which is basically sometimes people write it as 1 comma w, or starts with w naught comma w1 up to wn, and x is a vector consisting of n dimensional points x1, x2, xn. Or sometimes we take one more dimension. If you take a dot product of this, we'll get something like this. W naught x naught, we call it x naught x1 plus W1 x1 plus W2 x2 and so on and so forth. Okay. Again, so this is again a kind of regression line squeezed, regression line squeezed using some kind of using E, we are trying to squeeze the regression line. Again, we are using the same regression model. Okay, W dot x means again I'm using mx plus b. Okay, fine. So what we do is basically, as I told you, probability that y equal to 1 given x, we write it as simply h of wx. So then obviously probability that y equal to 0 given x will be 1 minus h of w dot x. Okay, because total probability is 1. See how it is modeling the situation. This particular logistic function is modeling the situation. Now, if I want to write down the combined stuff, because at the end of the day, I want to classify whether particular is a male or particular is a female. So I have a binary class. It's called binary class. Of course, this logistic regression could be extended to what to say for multiple classes also. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine this function. So this could be combined as like this. Okay. Now you can see probability that y equal to 1 given x and w. So put y equal to 1, put y equal to 1. If you put y equal to 1 here, it will go to 0. So we have this first one. Okay. And if probability of y equal to 0 given x and w. If you put y equal to 0 here, it will go out and it will remain y equal to 0. So second part will remain. So we are able to combine it. Now what we're going to do is we consider each data point to be independent. Okay. So the probability of any data point to be 1 or 0 is independent. And therefore, if you have an independent probability, then you can write the total probability for, I mean, you can write the total probability as the multiplication of all the probabilities. You might be knowing the law of independent probability, that probability of AB is always probability of A into probability of B. Okay, if you have independent events. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this probability here to be something like this. So I'm taking a product. This is product. Okay, and the probability of y I given it. This is the formula. So I'm getting some kind of formula here, and then I'm introducing something called maximum likelihood. Okay, so I want to use something called maximum likelihood. I don't want to get into more details of this. This is just a kind of math. So even if you don't understand anything, let it be. We are not actually looking at the math side of it. So we want to just, compute the log likelihood. So what does it do is that given a sample to you and some kind of parameters to you. So which parameters are there that will maximize the probability of observing the sample that you have? That is what maximum likelihood is all about. So we calculate the log of that and we calculate the loss this way. So this is just some logarithmic rule. And finally, like mean square error, which were computed in the, again, one more step is required, which were computed in the regression. We are getting some other error here. So this is the error, which is basically negative log likelihood. And I want to minimize this error again. I want to find my W in such a way that this error should be minimum. Again, it's a problem of minimization. Again, we are going to use gradient descent. Again, we are going to use the gradient descent. Okay, so I will not say thank you, but let's go to the, I'm sorry that by mistake. So let's go to the Python and let's learn something about which I basically have. Okay, so let's go to this Python. Let's learn the logistic regression model. Okay, so there are so many things which I've done. So, okay, so here what we are going to do is we're going to run a logistic regression model on the MNIST data. MNIST data is a data of images and used by the US Postal Code services. What they have done is they have handwritten so many digits and taken the images of it. So there are basically images from 0 to 9, and we want to classify those images. Okay, so what do we do is I'm importing a NumPy library here. I'm importing NumPy library. I'm importing a matplotlib.pyplot for the plotting sessions. Here I purposely use TensorFlow and Keras, because I don't know whether you know TensorFlow Keras, but it is used good. You can do a lot of deep learning, and this is not a deep learning model, but I purposely did that because you should get well aware of these libraries, what they do. Basically, most of the people, those who deep learning, they use TensorFlow and Keras. Okay, so I'm going to, and that these libraries have dataset, inbuilt dataset called MNIST. Okay, so let me run this file. Okay, and so I'm running, I'm importing all the libraries that are required. Okay,
Milan sir, sir,
your
Python notebook is not visible, sir. Only
not
your
visible.
PPT, only your PPT is visible, sir.
Okay.
Sir, please reshare it by sharing entire window.
Yeah. I got it.
Yeah, yes.
Got it. I need to share the screen, right?
You need to share the entire screen. Yes, sir. Now it is visible, sir.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, you are using Google
Okay.
Colab.
Yeah. So I'm using Collaborator here. Of course. So what we do is we are given a data set of images, and what we are trying to do is we are trying to classify them. Those images are numbered from 0 to 9, and they are the handwritten numbers used by US Postal Code actually. So they have provided us the data set, and it is overused data. Everybody uses this data, and this is a very exciting data for most of the applications in machine learning. So the data set consists of images only. Okay. So, and what we have is X observation and Y observation. Y observation is basically an image, label of an image. So X observation is an image, and Y observation is a label of image. For example, X observation. So here, the X observation for our problem, the problem which you are going to solve, X observation and Y observation. So something like this. So here we have an image, okay, as X observation, and Y observation is its label. For example, if I have an image like this, which is written by 5, then this is actually its label. What they have taken is they have taken the image and they have labeled it. So for example, we have an image of 6 here, a handwritten image. They have taken a photograph of that, and then they have labeled it as 6, obviously. Okay. So again, as you can see that X observations are images, and computer don't understand images. Images are basically nothing but the matrices in terms of in the language of computer. Okay. So they are actually, we put a grid on this, and here we have, these are the pixels. Every image is made up of pixels, small picture elements, and all these values are intensity values basically. Each inside the value there is some color scale. Based on the color scale, these values varies from 0 to 255. If you take a grayscale image, which is basically kind of a which varies from black to white. So for black we have pixel value 0. For white we have pixel value 255. Okay, so all these images are there, and those images from the MNIST dataset, all the images are of 28 by 28 size. 28 by 28 size. So first thing I would like to tell you that the computer don't understand these images basically. Okay, what we need to do is we need to convert it into a long vector. The vector will be 28 into 28. It will be 784 dimensional vector. What you do, you take all these value elements here and you put it like this. Okay, so now your image is basically a long vector, 784 dimensional vector you can think, and we have such millions and millions of image in our data set. So that's why I decided to use the libraries, the things like Google Colab and all these things. Just the model is pretty simple, logistic regression. People don't really use logistic regression for this kind of task. They use more complex models like neural network or deep learning. But I have decided just to show you, to give you a kind of a smell of these libraries. Okay. Now, if you are able to treat your data set like this, you have now another data X and Y. Each image is now a 784 dimensional vector here. Each image is now 784 dimensional vector, and you will be given its label. For example, this is a 784 dimensional vector for the image 5, it will be 5. This is 784 dimensional vector for the image 0, it will be 0. This is for 1 and something like this. So each and every image you are going to, so this is something called flattening. This is something called flattening. What do? You flatten out all the matrix, complete matrix into a long dimension. Okay. So let's get into the our this thing. Okay, great. So I have just run this. Now I will show you what's happening here. So X train, Y train, X test, Y test. Just hold on. What I'm going to do is I'm loading the MNIST data. It's giving me the error. Just 1 second. So what I'm doing is I'm already splitting my data set into train and test. Okay, so there is this mistake here. So it will run now. Okay. So you can see image width and image height. So what I'm doing here, so I'm defining the image width and image height to be xtrain dot shape and xtrain dot shape here of 2. So image width and image height. So I'm getting an image width and image height, and I'm listing first 5 Y-train elements. So you can see that I have 5, 0, 4, 1, 9, all these elements in the Y-train. Okay, so just a moment. Okay, so let me get down. Okay, so here what I'm doing is, okay, so let me show you if I can probably show how what this data is about and how the image could be seen. Okay, if I'm able to show, I just maybe I'm not able to recall the command, but I would like to show that command. Okay, let me see whether I can do that. Here I will add one code snippet. Code. Let me write down whether I can see. So here I have got, I want to show, say, plt dot show, if I can. X train, sorry, X underscore train, no, 0. Let me show you the image of 5. Sorry, T R. I'll be very happy if I get the image of 5 there. So strain is not defined. Oh, sorry. Capital X maybe. Yeah, so. Yeah, so this is the image. So you can see here the array 5, 0. I'm listing some few elements here. So X train of 0. If you look at X train of 0, you can see the 5. If you look at X train of 1, you will see 0. So let's see. These images looks like this. 0. Okay. Now what I'm doing is, this is something some interesting stuff here. This is for the first time you might have been encountering this, or some of the people. This is something called one hot encoding. One hot encoding. What it does basically is, remember we have images varying from 1 to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Suppose I want to indicate the image 5. Suppose given image where 5 is written, and what I'm doing is I'm converting these labels 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into some one hot encoded vector. So 5 can be encoded as 1 at the 5th place. Okay, 5 can be encoded as 1 at the 5th place. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm trying to convert into categorical vectors. This is called one hot encoding. This is basically a 5. This is 0. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4, and so on and so forth. Okay. In the next, so I need to run this. I guess I have run. Okay. And now I'm see how many labels I have. Of course, I'm converting the everything into the 10 labels, as I say, and now I'm using this logistic regression model. So here in this case, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to flatten my vectors. So that is what I told you initially. I have flattened it out. And in Keras, we do model.add, model.add, and we do compile. Now here I'm using something called categorical cross entropy. If you have a binary regression, you have seen the binary logistic regression, you have seen the loss. Okay, but now I have 10 classes, so I'm computing that loss for 10 classes. Here you have optimizer as Adam optimizer, and matrices as accuracy, something called confusion matrix or something like that we are using. So I'm running a model, and then what I do in the next step is basically I just fit the model. So model is fitting, and I'm using just 10 iterations. So I'm using an Adam optimizer. It's one of the optimization algorithm to minimize the gradient. Okay, so there are a lot of optimizers that you can use. You can use the kind of things like other meta heuristics here, just to change the stuff. You know, you can publish papers using this just by changing the slightly the algorithms here. Okay, optimize that is optimization algorithm is called learning algorithm, for example. Okay, logistic regression is a machine, and if you whatever the learning what the optimization method you use to minimize the loss is called learning algorithm. So machine learning is all about you need a machine and you need a learning algorithm. Learning algorithm is all nothing but the optimization algorithm that you learn the weights out of it. Okay, so this is going down. As you can see that it has computed the loss, it has computed the accuracy, and I have shown that loss and accuracy plot here. I've shown that loss and accuracy plot here, and you can just get that I'm just doing it on validation set and training set. You can see the training accuracy goes down a bit, and validation accuracy is well within the bounds. So training accuracy always, you know, as number of epochs increases, training accuracy always goes down, and validation accuracy remains at some, uh, at some kind of, we can say yes, it's a reasonable level we have at this moment. Okay, so having said this, so we have built a regression model also. So if you do have any questions, you can please ask me here. I would like to end myself. It's already 3:38. Okay, guys, if you have any question, I have started around 2:40, I guess. Yeah.